Good morning, nerds. Welcome to step 4 or part 4 or whatever of the cookie clicker tutorial. We're going to be working on the Unity UI engine, aka Canvas. And for this module, we will also be doing a lot of procedural work. We started that process with our uh, basically power up add-on over here in our game manager. And we're just going to keep on building on that. The first thing that we're going to do is what we didn't finish up on the last tutorial, which is add our cache per second upgrades. So we'll go ahead and do that. Then we're going to move into getting some of the procedural stuff done, and then we are probably done with this project. There's some more room we could take this, but I'm not going to mess with it too much more after this. So, um, excuse me. The next thing that we want to be working on is, again, let's get some clicks per second, not clicks per second, excuse me, cache per second things going. And so what I want to do is add basically the ability to do some cache per second upgrades. And we already basically have the engine built. There's just one minor tweak we're going to need to do. And that's one of the things I want to call out with this kind of design is that it's really built very robustly in the area of being able to upgrade as we go and improve things as we go. I want to be able to keep on updating it and making changes and extending it. It's very extensible right now, and as we're going to see in a minute, we're very, very close to being able to have almost infinite possibility by just simply editing a few things in Game Manager. And we could have, a game designer could just spend some time in Game Manager and really like buff the hell out of this thing and not have to even ever touch the code again, which is kind of our goal. And then if you wanted to edit or modify other things in the code, we've got it designed in such a way that that's not going to take a lot of work. So we're in a good spot here. So let's go ahead and get started. The next thing I want to do is we're going to copy this power up button. And again, like last time, don't worry too much about placement and stuff. Normally I get kind of fussy about that, but in this case we're going to be kind of scrapping it all anyways. Again, trying to get that procedural effect in place. So for now, we're just going to duplicate this thing. Did Control D to duplicate the power up button, and I'm just going to grab the second one and kind of just drag it down a little bit. That's good enough. And we're going to make a couple of quick changes to it. Nothing super major. The first one is where it says power up button. We're going to change our power up num to 1. And then the only other change we're going to make here is in our sprites. I'm going to take my button where we've got our button image, and I'm just going to swap it out for this baby here. Literally that's the only work we have to do to fix the button. And then in our game manager, we're going to go ahead and add an extra power up. I'm going to call this one child labor because we're going to let this one just kind of run on its own. Cache per click is going to be 0, but cache per second, I'm going to make it give us 10 cents per second. So I'm going to go 0.1. And then we're going to go ahead and just let it curve on the same rate as the other starting cost. I think I'm going to make it do cost multiplier 3, just so that way it'll be a slightly different algorithm. You'll notice different progress bars going. And we're going to go ahead and run that. And as we click, you're going to see that bar fill up the same way. I can click on it and increase it. If we look at our thing here, it did just pop up to level 1. It isn't adding any cache per second though, so we do need to work on that. But you will notice that that bar is filling up slightly slower than it did before. So it does look like not only is it picking up the level, it's also picking up that increase. And we are getting that it takes, a little bit longer to buff that up. So we've got a lot of it working right now. What we don't have is the actual cache per second part working. but the infrastructure is there, which is great. We're going to go back into our game manager code. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Let's go ahead and double click on canvas, zoom in a bit, and then go back to our game manager again. I'm going to go back to our game manager script, and basically there's only two things we need to edit here. Again, we've built this from an infrastructure standpoint really efficiently. Get cache per second actually needs to work very, very similar to how get cache per click works. We need to start off with a value, cycle through the power-ups, update the values accordingly, and then return it, just like we did with cache per click. And if you want more example of how that works, you can check out tutorial 3, which goes into some pretty good detail there. But basically, I'm just going to copy paste. So we're going to steal all of that. And I'm going to paste it in right there. And I don't technically have to change my variable names, but I like to. So we're going to start our cache per second. We're going to start that at 0 because normally I don't want any cache per second when the game defaults. My CPS is going to be cache per sec. Can't remember if it's sec or second. It must have been second. And then return CPS. And that's going to give us, that'll fix, again, you don't need to go with me on this, but you can, that should give us at least the screen update. So as I upgrade this, we're seeing that 10 cents show up there, which is great. But we are still not seeing it add into my values here. So now what we need to do is we need to think about how to get it there. Fortunately for us, we can also look at our update function. Now remember that update is called once per frame. There's approximately 60 frames per second. So what we're about to do is going to be very, very bad, but it gives us a good starting point. Every tick, every frame, every 1/60th of a second, I'm going to go cache plus equals cache per second. That should start adding stuff for me, but what we're going to rapidly figure out is that this is not really what we want. So we're going to go ahead and run this. Right now, again, it's not adding anything, nothing's really changing, but if I click it once, I'm going to buy this upgrade one time, and man, that is kicking off. And really the reason why is, if we think about this, it's adding 10 cents per frame. There's 60 frames per second, so it's adding about $6 per second. And I might have that math wrong. No, it should be adding about $6 per second, but that certainly appears like it's adding a lot more than 6 per second. My multiplication might be off a little bit there. Anyways, but it's adding very, 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 very quickly. And that's definitely not what we want to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop that, and we're going to look at, we already kind of predicted that this would happen. Update is called once per frame. What I want this to do really is, I could try to make a timer that every 1 second it goes off and it updates those values. But really what I'd like to see is more of a progression where every fraction of a second you get that fraction of money. And fortunately, that is actually even easier to do in Unity than doing a 1 second pulse. So what we're going to do here is we're going to multiply this. Really what we want to multiply this is by approximately 0.016, is going to be about 1/60th of a second. If you divide a second into 60 parts, they're about this big. But actually, that's not even really what you want, because not every frame is going to be the exact same length, so this will be slightly uneven. Fortunately, Unity actually provides this exact functionality in a function called time.deltaTime. And we've used that a little bit to calibrate movement, but it's going to give us the proportion of a second that has actually elapsed. So this is going to give us a fraction of a second. We multiply that by our cache per second, and that should actually slow down our cache to the speed that we want it. So if I run this right now, it should give us approximately, you're going to notice, it should give us approximately 10 cents per second, give or take, 1,000. It's about 10 per second. It's hard for me to gauge that perfectly, but it feels like it's working at about the right speed. And as we now click this and upgrade it a little bit more, now we're getting about 20 seconds per click. Um, we're getting about 20 seconds per, or 20 cents per click, which is good. Um, or 20 second or $20 or 20 cents per second. Sorry, I was misspeaking there. Um, 30, 40. Now we're getting about a half second or almost a half a dollar or 50 cents ish. And so there's 50 cents. And we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we're getting about, that, half a dollar, 50 cents per second or so. So that's working out pretty nice. So now that we've got that working, we know that our cash per second is good. We know that this is all good. There's a couple things that we want to do, and the next one is actually we're going to delete this power up because we don't want it anymore. So I'm going to delete the new baby one, and now we're just left with this guy. Um, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here in my assets folder. We don't really need this. It might be overkill for such a tiny project, but really we should have a scripts folder. And I haven't been organizing my scripts, so I'm going to drop my scripts into that scripts folder. Oh, come on. And then we are also going to make a prefabs folder, which is where I was trying to go to next. So I'm going to go create folder for prefabs. And we've done a lot with prefabs in some of the other projects that I've worked on with you guys, but basically to create a prefab, all we've got to do is take a game object like this power up button, drag it down here, and now we have a prefabbed version of this. And now actually what we're going to do is we're going to delete our original as well. So we're going to go ahead and knock that one out. And now we don't have anything up there. And that's why I said don't worry too much about your organization and stuff because it's not going to matter. So what I want to do here is have the ability to, no matter how many power-ups I have, I want them to add themselves. And then I also want to have them organize themselves nicely in a way that I can, that's extensible, right? Like I want to be able to have 1,000 power-ups hypothetically. As many as my game designer can come up with and my artist can draw icons for. So what I'm going to do next is, again, we're going to play with some UI elements. I'm going to add a scrolling area. So we're going to go UI and we're going to add a scroll view. And scroll views are used to create, as you can even see just by looking at it, to create kind of scrollable content. And what I want to do is make it kind of take up this over here on the right side of things and see how big things are. So what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to look at this. This is 120. The power up was 120 by 120. So I want my scrolling area, I want 2 columns of power ups, at least for now. So I'm going to call this 240. And then my height, I actually want to make it just stretch the entire height. So we're going to do this guy down here, which is going to work off, actually, wait, this one here. So it'll work off the right and then also stretch vertically. And so I want it to take up the entire height, actually. Let's go, take my scroll view. And I want my height, my position X is going to be, again, we want to kind of set that to our, let's go -120 should get the whole thing. Yeah, there we go. Okay. -120 is getting the whole thing in the space. And then I just need to figure out my top and my bottom. So my top, actually, I just want that to be at 0. My bottom, I want it to be 0 also because I want it to be hitting the bottom of the screen. And that's given me this really, really nice large scrolling area. And it should give me a good place to drop content in. I only want it to scroll up and down, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete this scroll bar horizontal. We don't need that. And then I'm going to go to my scroll bar vertical again. I don't need it to come up. I do want to pay attention to its width. I'll need that later. But the bottom, I don't need that at 17. I really need that at 0 as well, so it's taking up the entire space. And now I think we're in pretty good shape. Now, the last thing I want to do here is think about what's going to happen when stuff gets put on it. And for example here, you've got this content spot, and this is where it's kind of paying attention to the scroll. And if I just start dropping content on here, you're going to notice that, and you don't need to follow along with this at home, you're going to notice my content is kind of off in a weird spot. And if I drag it on, it's only going to show up when it's in this content area. And there's another button over here. It's going to show up. So this is not very automated. I'm not very happy with anything that's going on here. So we're just going to delete that too. So I'm not really thrilled with that, and I also don't really like the white background here. So we're going to kind of fix some of those things. The first thing I'm going to do is in my viewport, I really don't need that white space, so I'm going to take this source image, and we're just going to delete that, although it's still doing this white thing. Let's just take that and adjust the alpha down. I thought that would fix that, but apparently it's not. I'm not really thrilled with any of that. I'm going to Control Z some of that. Honestly, I thought that would get rid of that, but that is not doing what I thought it would. So I'm going to Control Z. Okay, there's that step. We're going to go back to deleting those. And I'll figure out the transparency here in a little bit. I thought it was easier than that, but I'm not remembering how to get that out of there. So, thought we just adjust the alpha. Oh yeah, we just adjust the alpha down. Okay, so if we just eliminate the alpha on that, now we've got this nice. We can see it on the lines here, but when we run, it shouldn't show up, which is great. Okay. So I'm getting happier with how things are looking, but now we need to get it so that when we drop content on it, what I want is so that the content just automatically aligns itself, because otherwise we're not going to be able to do this procedural stuff. So the easiest way to accomplish that is inside of our content section, we can add a component. And the component that we want to add is, if we just start typing in grid, there's one called a grid layout group. And this is really cool. It does exactly what it sounds like it does. It creates grids. And what I'm going to do is say, hey, my content is 120 by 120. So we're going to make our grid size 120 by 120. And then I'm just kind of looking at my settings here. I don't want any spacing between my buttons. If I did, I'd have to do a little bit more math to widen things out. My starting corner, yeah, let's do upper left. Let's start it going horizontal. That means it'll fill this way and then work its way down. My child alignment should be upper left. That looks great. And once we do that, what's going to happen here is if we add more content in, so let's go into my prefabs and add some content to it. It's automatically going to start setting that up in my grid. But what you'll notice is that despite the fact that we did say, hey, I want it to be in the grid, and I want it to be double wide, we're not using any of this space over here. And the main reason for that is the entire thing is 240 across. One of these is 120, but we didn't account for the width of the scroll bar. And we did look at this scroll bar vertical, and we did see that it was width 20. So if I go to my content tab, and instead of being, sorry, not the scroll view, instead of that being 240, really that should be 260. And look at that, it's fitting the content perfectly. So that's where I want it to be, and that's going to make things look good. But then the one other problem that we're going to have is if I run this, you're going to notice that the scroll bar just kind of knocked itself off the screen. And that's because my positioning changed, because it's working off the center. I actually need to add some pixels into my position. So I'm going to change this to, I think, -140 should do it. That looks like it's too far. I can see the gap. We added 30 and it's centering, or I'm sorry, we added 20 and it's centering, so maybe 130 will do it. That should show us That leaves room for the scroll bar. Oh, there's no scroll bar because there's nothing to scroll right now. Um, but that's looking pretty good. And actually, if we start duplicating some content, that should give us, there's enough stuff to actually need to scroll with. Now we should be able to see the scroll bar, and I don't know why that's not showing up, but if I use my mouse to roll, I can get down there and see some of that. So we're kind of in the right spot. But I'm going to, again, just kind of delete out all this content. It looks like things are fitting correctly. So now what we want to do is work on figuring out how to populate this. So we have a Power Up prefab, we have a location for it all to go, and we have all the data that we want to populate all right here. So we have all the pieces that we need. Now we just need to kind of link them together with a little bit of code, and that's going to pretty much finish up this entire project. So to keep this easy, there is a few more things that we need to do in terms of data, but not too much. One of the things we need to do is we're going to go into our code and pick up kind of some extra space. The two things that we need to add here, we're going to need to add two more variable spaces or two more variables into our thing, which is going to be a public game object for our Power Up prefab. And that's going to be the actual button itself. And then we need a public transform. And that's going to be the content area that we want to drop it. So what's the prefab's parent going to be? And so we're going to call this Power Up parent. And this is going to make things really pretty easy. So when the game starts up, what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through all of the different objects. And then we're going to place them all in the screen, and then everything should be fine. So this is going to be really pretty easy. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go here. We're going to start off with, I'm going to leave a couple game objects on the screen. So like, let's say we're practicing or we're testing and I forgot and I was dumb and I accidentally left a couple of transforms on the screen here. And I don't really want those there, especially if the designer made a mistake. So what we're going to do is when we start up, we're going to clear all those. And the easiest way to do that is, again, another for each. We're going to look for every single transform. We're going to call them T in Power Up parent. And every time we find one, we're just going to destroy its game object. So we're going to go to destroy t.gameObject. And that's going to allow us to quickly destroy anything in that space. Now, when we save this, we do need to make sure that we link that game object. So we haven't done that yet. So I'm going to go into my game manager down here in Power Up prefab and Power Up parent. I'm going to drag my prefab into my prefab. And then I'm going to drag that content holder into my Power Up parent. And now when I run this, what we should get is it's going to empty those out. So that's pretty great. That was nice. That got rid of the content that was there that shouldn't be. And now what we need to do is populate it with the content that should be there. So what we're going to do is do a for loop, and this time we do need to do a for loop. And this is going to make more sense in a moment, but we need to keep track of the index number. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do int I equals 0 because we want that index number to be I. And we're going to keep on counting as long as I is less than powerups.length is basically the number of power-ups in PowerUp. So if the game designer changes that, this should just keep up with whatever those changes are. And then we're going to increment by 1. And as we do that, what we're going to do is every time we have a new index, we're going to create a new game object called GO, which I'm going to pronounce Go, but it really means game object. Go is going to be equal to instantiate, and we're going to instantiate a brand new copy of that Power Up prefab. So Power Up prefab, and we are going to auto parent it to, if we use the second constructor here, what that will do, or the second overload rather, is it will, you give it an original, which is the prefab we're looking at, and a transform, and it will automatically parent it to that transform. So we're going to go power up parent, and that's it. That should just create them. But what that's going to do right now for us, for example, is it's going to create two game objects. And actually, for this discussion, I want to add one more buff. So we're going to add after child labor, we're going to add grannies. And we're going to say, hey, those ones are 0.5 cash per second, but they're going to cost 50 to start. And my cost multiplier is going to be like 10. So they're going to be a little bit tougher to get. And what should happen is if I run this, it has created three. We have three power-ups. It's created three, but they're definitely not the correct three. It's giving us actually 3 copies of chef training, which all work correctly, but there's only chef training. There's no other kinds of buffs that we can get to. So it sort of works in the sense that all the chef training buttons work correctly, but it definitely is not what we wanted. So we're going to go back into our code, and what we need to do is we need to tell it which power up we are. So we're going to go power up script, PUS is going to be equal to, actually I'm just going to go power up script, is going to be equal to go.getComponent of power up script. So we're going to look at the game object that we just created. We're going to find its power up script. And then we can adjust a few things. We're going to go ps dot power up num is going to be equal to I. So it's going to automatically equal the index that's correct there. And so now what we should see is a little bit of improvement on that. So if we run this now, it does indeed say Granny's chef training and child labor. As we upgrade these, you'll see Granny's is increasing very, very slowly. Child labor did actually add my damage per, or my clicks or cash per second. If I add chef trainings, those are definitely adding cash per click. I can add Grannies, and look, that really increases the speed quickly. Grannies really make a difference here, and this is all working out pretty nicely. The one thing that's not happening, and actually one of the things I do like here is if I buy some child labors, you can see that smooth, look at how smooth that progression is as it's increasing in value. And look, now it's lit up and you can actually click on it. So we're seeing these really nice smooth curves, and that's because we are doing it 60 times per second slightly instead of one big time once per second. So that's given us a really nice smooth UI. I really like that. But one of the things I am noticing is that if we look closer, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You're going to notice that that is not a granny in the background, nor is that child labor in the background. And that's because they're still all using that default image, which is the chef's graphic. So we also need to tell it we want a different graphic in there. And the easiest way to do that, again, because I'm trying to stick with this game manager being in charge of everything, I want to create a way that they can set it here and have it affect. So we're going to go back into my game manager script. We're going to go back down to our power-ups, and I'm going to add a couple more things. Well, just one for now. We're going to go public sprite. How about sprite? Let's go button image. Button icon. Button icon. And now what we're going to do here is we're also going to say, hey, while we're here, we're going to go, well, the power up knows where the button is. So we're going to go ps.myButton, because we already had that, dot get component. And there is an image on the button, which that's redlining, so we're going to have to definitely fix that, but that's okay. And And we're going to change, I want hotkeys to work. So we're going to go ahead and right click, quick actions and refactoring. We want unityengine.ui for that one. There's a lot to pick from, but we want unityengine.ui. And that's going to fix that. Now we can do dots and they're going to work. We're going to say dot sprite is going to be equal to powerups I dot button icon. And now that should work. So if we save that, that's all it's going to take. Well, actually, we need to do some quick edits here. In Game Manager now, we now see these button icons. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my sprites library. I see these here. I'm going to put this in the child labor one. I'm going to put this in the grannies one. And whoops, that one didn't take. We're going to put that in the grannies one, that in the chef training one. And we are good to go here. So now if we run this, whoops, I need to dial that back out. And now that does look like a granny, that does look like a baby, and that does look like my chef. So as these light up, we can definitely see the baby there. If we click that, it's going to deactivate again, but definitely all of my buttons are now working correctly and actually looking correct. So the last thing, so that's basically all of that is working and it's working pretty well. The last thing I want to do here is I'm going to design one more quick power up. And then we're going to talk about prerequisites. So I'm going to go like master oven. And we're going to give this one 50 cash per click. This is kind of a game ender kind of a buff. Normally you would want this at the end of the game, and that's kind of my point here. We're going to go cash per second is going to be 5. So it's going to give you a lot of money. And it's giving you a lot of cash per click. So this is giving you like both bonuses all at once. Start cost, just to make this easier to demonstrate, I'm going to do it a little bit cheaper. So we're going to go 30. And its cost multiplier, let's go ahead and just leave that at 10. It's going to be pretty academic. And I'm just going to use the plain gray button for that. I didn't make an oven button, I'm sorry, but this is going to kind of get our point across. Now here's the issue though, is getting to that oven is not going to take me all that long. And once I do it, it's kind of a game ender. Actually, let's go ahead and do some of these. And really what I'm trying to do is build it up so that I can buy the ovens faster. But once I've got a couple of them, it's going to turn pretty disgusting pretty fast. Like that bar fills up pretty quickly now. And it's just filling up even faster every time I do this. Like I said, this is kind of intended as the game ender. But you know, and that oven is just building up really quick. And so now here's the thing is I don't want that oven to be purchasable from the beginning. And actually, I don't want grannies to be purchasable until we've bought some child labor first. So what I want to do is think about how can we make that happen. Also, I'm not really thrilled about this display here. Master oven it just gets too big. So I want to adjust both of those things. So I want to fix that master oven thing just because that's an easy problem while I'm thinking about it. And so what I'm going to do is go into the prefab. I'm going to click once on the prefab here and open it in my inspector. That's going to take me into the prefab editor, and I'm just going to click on this TMP button, and I'm going to say, hey, auto size that, and we're going to set our minimum down pretty low. I'm going to set my minimum to 10. So it won't get any smaller than 10, but it's definitely going to be a lot smaller than its default of 34.5. And what that should do is force that text to stay on the screen. And you can see that now is working pretty well with the master oven. It's not getting any bigger there. And so if I do that, as I increase that cost, the master oven shouldn't be able to exceed that space. And we're going to kind of just buff things a little bit. I'm trying to get my values up a little bit higher because I want this to become a 3-digit number just to kind of test it, but you know, that's going pretty quick. We're at $60. See, I should have used a smaller number here. but it's building pretty quickly, so that's okay. We're at $90, and actually this is where we should notice a change is once I get to $100, everything just kind of shrunk to enable that to still fit on that same button without going over it. So that's good. That's kind of what we wanted to see. That's nice, but we still want to deal with the prerequisites. So what I want to do is set it up so that I have to buy a certain amount of child labor before I can get grannies. I have to buy a certain amount of chef's training before I can buy a master oven. So we're going to set up some prerequisites. And so what we're going to do here is go back into our code. We're just going to add a little bit of features to our game manager. And I think this is going to be basically the last thing that we do today. So after my button icon, we're going to add two new things. We're going to do public int a prereq index. That's going to be the power up that you need to hit. And then we're going to go public int prereq count, which is going to be how many of them you need to have. We're going to go ahead and save that. And then the last thing that we're going to do here, and actually if we do this, it's not going to make any real difference. Like you can set those values, but we're not using them for anything. And I'm not going to bother demonstrating it, but it's not going to work. It's not going to do anything for us. So what we want to do here is actually make it do something. And what I want to do here instead is I want them, we're going to start every single prerequisite. And again, we need to start off, if I click on power-ups, we're going to start every single power-up disabled. So I'm going to just uncheck that checkoff box here on the power-up button on my prefab. And that's going to disable them all to start with. And then what we want to do is only enable power-ups that we have unlocked. So now that we've got that there, what we can do is go back to our code again. And our code for this, we're going to create a function here called unlock power-ups. And that's going to run periodically when we need it to. That lets us know, hey, it's time to make a power-up more useful. So we're going to go void unlock power-ups. And inside of here, whoops, I forgot to put my curly braces in. Inside of here, what we're going to do is, again, we're going to use the for I method. So we're going to go int I is less than 0, or I equals 0. Oh, I forgot we need to create locked power-ups. We're going to comment this out for now. We'll come back to it in just a second. Up here in our code, we need to do locked power-ups, and we're going to make a list for that. So we're going to go public power-up. Actually, we need power-up script for this. And we're going to do locked power-ups. And actually, this needs to be a list. We need to have a bunch of them. So we're going to maintain a list of all the ones that are still locked. So we're going to go list of power-up script, and we are going to initialize that as a new list of power-up script. And so there we go. And then what we're going to do when we start up our project is as we create new power-ups, we're going to add them to our list. So we're going to say, hey, down here, we're going to say locked power-ups dot add PS. So every time a power-up is created and instantiated, we're going to go ahead and add it to our locked power-ups so that we know that they need to be unlocked. And now that we have this unlocked power-ups, now we're going to do for I is equal to 0. We're going to do as long as I is less than locked power-ups. And for lists, for arrays we use length, but for lists we use .count, I++. And that's going to let us cycle through all of those locked power-ups. What we're going to do is we're going to check them and see if their content has been unlocked yet. And so what we can do here is, and this is going to get really convoluted. This one took me a little while to write out. So apologies ahead of time. I'm going to end up needing to do this across 2 lines, but if power-ups, bracket power-ups, and I'll explain what this is in a second, and then inside of that, another bracket for locked power-ups, and then dot power-up num, dot prereq index. Wait a minute, I think I missed a step. Prereq index. I might have one too many or one too few of these. Just a second here. Looking at my notes, power-up num, prereq index. Oh yeah, there's just a closing bracket there. Dot level is greater than or equal to power-ups, locked power-ups, I dot power-up num dot prereq count. Okay, so if that happens, now I realize that this line is very, very convoluted and tough to read, but basically working from the inside out, what we're saying is, hey, locked power-ups dot I is going to be something. And it has a power-up num that represents it. What we're saying is, hey, if that number, let me work it actually from the outside. What we're saying here is we're saying, hey, our power-up needs to be at a certain level, and the power-up that we're looking for is the one that matches the index of the power-up num that we're on. And I realize that that sounds really complicated, but it works. Just if this isn't making sense to you, just do it and it's going to work, I promise, as long as you have all your brackets in the right spots. And we're comparing that to basically, does the level of the stuff you have, is that greater than or equal to the level of the stuff that you need? So the prereq count. And that's how that one's going to work. If that's true, that means you have enough power-ups to unlock the power-up. You have enough of your prerequisites to unlock this one. So if that happens, what we're going to do is we're going to say locked power-ups I dot game object. So whatever game object is attached to that script, we're going to go ahead and set that active by doing set active true. And then now that it's unlocked, it's no longer a locked power-up. So we can just do locked power-ups dot remove at I. And because that sets the counter off, because lists rearrange their values as you delete stuff, if I remove a power-up, let's say I remove power-up 1 from the list, power-up 2 becomes power-up 1, but I will become 2 as soon as it hits this curly brace, which means we'll have skipped over what used to be 2 and is now 1, unless we decrement or subtract 1 from I. And we're going to do that all in one space by doing I minus minus. So I realize that this is a really convoluted piece of code. It's short, but kind of disturbing. All I'm going to say is it definitely works if you have it typed in right, assuming I didn't typo. So definitely just, take it slow, type it, pay attention to your square brackets and which way they're pointed, and everything should be okay. But we're going to test it here in just a second. Now, the last thing that we need to do is this function is not being used by anything. We're going to use it in 2 spots. We're going to use it after we've generated our initial start. We're going to do it right here. And that's because as soon as we generate all of our stuff, some of them should be unlocked by default, right? Like your original chef training, your original babies, child labor should be unlocked. And then what I also need to do is when we level a power up, I need to do it there too. So we're going to go unlock power ups. If I run it in those 2 spots as needed, everything else should work okay. So we're going to go ahead and save that code. And I'm going to go back to my game manager, and we're going to kind of test this by going to our grannies. And now we have to do a little bit of counting. So chef training is 0, child labor is 1, grannies is 2. but I want it to be dependent on having some child labor first. So we're going to say, hey, my prereq index is 1 because that's what child labor is. And I want to say you have to have 5 of them in order to unlock grannies. For master oven, I'm going to say, hey, I want to have 0, but I want you to have had 10 chef trainings. So if I get 10 chef trainings, that should unlock the master oven. If I get 5 child labors, that should unlock grannies. And then the rest of them we're saying, hey, prereq index is 0, but also the prereq count is 0. So those should just unlock themselves at the beginning. And so if we've done everything right, this should all work. And we can see we only have chef training and child labor. So I'm going to go ahead and buff up kind of both of them together. And we are at 20 cents per child labor, so that is looking like we're pretty close there. Now this one should be level 5 because we will be going to 50 cents. Granny's just enabled itself, which is great. So now we just have to check and make sure chef training works, which we are getting pretty close on that one. My cash per click is 7. When it hits 11, we should be sufficient for the master oven, and that did unlock like it was supposed to. So now everything does appear to be working correctly. Everything is unlocking at the correct times, with the correct prerequisites, with the correct icons. So it looks like everything is pretty good here. Now I'm going through my list just to make sure that I didn't miss anything that I was planning on covering, but I think we're in pretty good shape here. I'm not noticing anything wrong with what we're doing. So I think we are pretty much done with this project. We've covered a lot of ground. A lot of this was procedural. So I'm hoping that this tutorial worked out for you. Today was all about procedurals. Little tiny bit of other stuff, but the other really cool thing is the extensibility possibilities. So for example, I can add 15 more upgrades, and I'm just gonna just randomly start naming some stuff. Rolling pin, and we're gonna name this one. Let's see here, we have child labor. Let's see, Granny Army. And we're gonna go like blender, no, not blender, let's go mixer, and maybe we add in other kind of cookies, so like chocolate chip cookies. I don't know how this is going to affect things, but let's see here, we already have the red velvet in there, but let's go like granola, no, like oatmeal raisin, hot, oatmeal raisin, and maybe some peanut butter cookies. And I'm not really changing my stats on any of these, so basically all of this stuff has the same stat as the master oven, but I just want to show that it works. Let's go, I don't know, what's another kind of cookie? I'm gonna make Oreos. That'll get me sued. Let's see here. Chocolate wafers with cream filling, because that's basically an Oreo, right? Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lower the prereq counts on all of those new ones, just to kind of show that it works. And basically the idea here is that we have basically extended out our game very rapidly. I went from nothing to this entire series of upgrades very quickly, and am having some slight problems with the scroll bar. I'm trying to remember how to fix that. So I'll probably do a tutorial 5 just to kind of do some cleanup things, because there is a little trick you have to do to get that to reactivate, but I don't remember what it is. But to get that to work, and basically that's it. We've done everything that we need to do. We've saved all the stuff that we need to save. This is basically a complete project, aside from the scrolling weirdness here. So I hope this worked out for you. And if it did, as always, we'd appreciate it if you click like and subscribe. And as always, when we close, keep on creating. Have a great day, nerds. Take care.